It's hard to believe that Shadow of the Erdtree has been out for half a year at this point. Many theories have been put to bed, many stories have come to light, and we still have no idea why we were shown a depiction of Miquella riding Torrent through the Land of Shadow. While questions still abound about the finer details of this story, one group of characters from the DLC have been thoroughly explored, and have each had their own dedicated video on this channel. The followers of Miquella were once a mysterious group of what we assume to be fellow Tarnished, who follow the movements of their lord. But as it turns out, they largely followed in Miquella's footsteps because they were enchanted to do so, and only one of them is confirmed to be Tarnished. For this compilation, we're going to take you through the stories of every member of Miquella's band of misfits, shining light on who they are, who they've been, and how their stories end. The Redmanes have earned a reputation of being one of the fiercest armies in the lands between. These knights, who lost their master to both Malenia's Rot and our very own hand during the Radahn festival, have every reason to abandon their post for greener pastures. But instead, they still fight back against the Rot taking over Caelid, burning it where they can in an attempt to preserve the land. The Redmanes place their service to Starscourge Radahn above all else, so it's interesting when we find our way to the Land of Shadow, and are greeted by a distinctive warrior, claiming to have fought alongside the Lion himself, and later revealing that she is indeed a Redmane. Freyja stands out from the other knights found fighting for Radahn, as she does not utilize the Redmane armor, instead donning a set much more reminiscent of the armor of Radahn himself. Today, we're going to explore the story and mindset of Freyja, the Redmane turned follower of Miquella. Because while she may place Radahn above all else, I believe she has a gross misunderstanding of who he was as a person, and as a lord. Upon entering the Land of Shadow, we're free to explore this space to our heart's content. However, it's very likely the first thing to really catch your eye will be a golden sign with NPCs huddled around it. Outside of Needle Knight Leda, there's a strong possibility the first character you speak with in the DLC will be Freyja, and she's more than happy to make your acquaintance.
Lady Leda spoke of you. You're that Tarnished, guided here by kindly Miquella, weren't we all? I am Freyja. I once fought alongside General Radahn. In battle, you can be sure I'll hold my own. Oh, another thing. Did you speak to our dour little friend? If you've yet to do so, have him give you a map of the Cross's whereabouts. You'll find more of them dotted about these lands. They are Miquella the Kind's footprints.
The dour friend she speaks of is Hornsent, a man with his own story and path through this land. But the important thing this teaches us about Freyja is that she cares not for a person's disposition. As long as she can call them an ally on the field of battle, that's more than enough for her. We get the opportunity to become Freyja's ally on the field if we explore the Bellarat Tower settlement and make our way to the Divine Beast Dancing Lion, where we can summon her as a cooperator. The battle is fierce, but Freyja charges into the fray without a word, ready to help us bring this towering beast down. After we do speak with her again, she will praise us for our battle prowess and reveal a bit more about herself.
Well met. That was a fine battle indeed. It heartens me that another warrior stands among us, among the beckoned. Long ago, I was stricken by scarlet rot in the swamp of Aeonia. Immobile, feverish, and in great pain, I was entirely resigned to death. I was left behind, and only kindly Miquella was good enough to seek me out. My wound was swollen and festering, exuding a most pungent odor. And yet he drained the poison from it, despite my wretched visage. Now, I consider this wound my compass. Let us both take kindly Miquella's guidance to heart. May we meet again on the battlefield. Brave warrior.
This story confirms something very interesting about the timeline of Elden Ring, because many have assumed Miquella was already residing within his cocoon when Malenia and Radahn did battle. But no. Freyja was visited by Miquella personally in the Swamp of Aeonia, left behind after their battle. We have to assume this wasn't too long after the battle either, because the Scarlet Rot is known to take those afflicted with it fairly quickly. This also means it's possible Miquella was along for the journey with Clean Rot Knight Finlay, as they brought Malenia back to the Haligtree, which would explain how Finlay was able to take that journey without facing heavy resistance. While it seems Freyja has been charmed, just as every other member of this merry band of misfits has been, I'd venture to say it may not have been necessary in her case. You could make the argument that Miquella charmed her so that she would not stay behind with the other Redmanes to try and mitigate the spread of rot across Caelid. But I believe it's equally valid to think Freyja may have joined Miquella of her own accord, as she owed him her life. Saving Freyja can be seen as a benevolent or calculated act on behalf of Miquella, depending on your personal interpretation. Either Miquella saw a distinguished knight of his promised consort and felt compelled to help, or he saw the opportunity to bring a particularly powerful pawn under his control. Either way, because she was saved, Freyja now serves Miquella, and that is why we find her in the Land of Shadow. We can continue to speak with Freyja and learn more about Hornsent, the man she introduced us to initially.
I wonder why the eternally dour fellow keeps his distance. He's one of the tower's Hornsent. I can only assume he fights for his own reasons and carries his own burdens, but we needn't concern ourselves with his affairs. He too was charmed by kindly Miquella and guided here, and that makes us allies. We're not gods, you and I. Even if we did manage to dig up the secrets of his past, I doubt our meddling could ever amount to much.
This conversation clues us into Freyja's opinion on the demigods of the Lands Between. Unlike Ansbach, who saw himself as fighting for a lord and ultimately asks us to establish a world ruled by men and not gods, Freyja sees the demigods as so far above the regular people that we can have no effect on their greater machinations. We know this isn't true, but for Freyja, this is gospel. If we look at Freyja's armor, we can learn a bit more about her past, but mostly we again hear the story of how she was saved by Miquella. Freyja's helm tells us it is the Golden Helm of Redmane Freyja, member of General Radahn's most distinguished knights. A hideous scarlet wound was once hewn into the center of the face. Later, Miquella gently put his lips to it, and the unfading scar became the compass that Freyja would thereafter follow. Not only did Miquella heal her, he did so with a kiss, which is interesting, because he was able to quell the rot without a needle. Her armor tells us it's the Golden Armor of Redmane Freyja, member of General Radahn's most distinguished knights. Affixed with a black woolen mantle. After witnessing Freyja's valor as a gladiator in his youth, Radahn invited her to join the ranks of his most trusted warriors. To me, this indicated that Freyja was a higher level of Redmane than those knights we're familiar with, which would explain why she doesn't wear the Redmane set. We get confirmation of this later on, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. After we reach the Shadowkeep and Miquella's Great Rune is broken, we can speak with Freyja again, and she'll have something new to tell us.
There you are. Good. If you happen to see Lady Leda, tell her that I'm striking out on my own. Don't worry, I've no mind to cross any of you. The guidance of kind Miquella remains etched into my very flesh. It's only... there's something that I must know. Kindly Miquella spoke of the vow he once made with General Radahn, and it is here the vow shall be honored. I am a Redmane. I must know the nature of the vow. There is no need for concern. I will be true to my word. Although I do feel a hint of regret. Lady Leda, Honorable Ansbach, and warriors like you are all of a special breed. How glorious it would have been had we met in battle as sworn enemies.
Now that Miquella's hold over her is broken, we see a bit more of Freyja's true personality. her lust for battle seeping through. She's adamant that while we all follow the path of Miquella and we are allies, she recognizes the strength of her companions and fantasizes about meeting them in battle in order to test her mettle. A true Redmane through and through, Freyja lives for a challenge. This point is further proven by our ability to summon her for our fight against the great red bear Rugalia, which I almost definitely just mispronounced. As we make our way through the Shadowkeep and up the specimen storehouse, we hear Freyja overhead, having an issue reading something.
Let me see. Fickle, fidgety little letters. I should wipe you. Now, Freyja. Don't let it pile you up. Take it slow. Take it slow. By my lord, will I ever make sense of this jumble?
Once we find her, we can speak with her about the tablets that are vexing her.
Hello? I'm afraid I'm busy. A curse upon my lack of foresight. I should have asked Ansbach to impart his knowledge when I had the chance.
If we're following Ansbach's quest, we can tell him of Freyja's plight, and he'll give us a letter to deliver explaining the situation. That Miquella has taken Mohg's body, so that he may place Radahn's soul inside, reviving his promised consort.
Sir Ansbach? To me? What on earth could it... Yes. Of course. I see. As the Festival of War concluded, General Radahn's soul met an honorable end, but kindly Miquella wishes to revive it, which is fine by me. I know it would pain old Jeren, but war has always suited General Radahn best, and certainly far more than any honorable death. Endless war to invigorate the soul, as befits General Radahn, the great lion. Thank you. Now I finally cast off my misgivings. Give my regards to Honorable Ansbach. Tell him, if we should meet in battle, to face your bow would be fine enough, but to face your blade would be an honor. All that remains is the fight, for our kind Miquella.
There is a lot to unpack here, but I want to start with the shield she gave us. The Golden Lion Shield is a shield made to resemble a fierce golden lion with a luxuriant mane, awarded to especially valorous members of Radahn's personal guard on the occasion of its formation. This confirms Freyja was no simple Redmane, but a member of Radahn's personal guard, meaning she had access to him on a more personal level than most Redmanes. Given this information, it raises the question, is she right for thinking Radahn would not have been satisfied with an honorable death? During this interaction, she mentions old Jeren, and how he would disagree with the idea that war suited Radahn best. We need only look at the eccentric's hood to prove she's wrong in her assumption that an honorable death was not what Radahn would have wanted. A pointy, ragged hood, worn by the knight Jeren. The hood hides an aged, bearded mask. Jeren served General Radahn as a guest commander, and they're said to have sworn an oath of honorable death to one another. Here in black and white we can see that Radahn swore an oath to Jeren that his death needed to be an honorable one, meaning that he never expected to be a conqueror forever, and that if he wanted to be defeated, it needed to be in combat. Jeren himself expresses his gratitude after we defeat Radahn by saying,
"Last, the war festival has ended. Brave champion, you have our gratitude. The celebration was spectacular. General Radahn is surely pleased. Festering with rot and crippled by madness, all he wanted was an honorable death."
So given what we learned directly from Jeren, Radahn wanted an honorable death, and while Freyja believes war suits him best, that's her opinion, and not the truth of what Radahn wanted. After all, if eternal war was his goal, there was no need for the festival. A crazed Radahn pointed in any direction would have been enough to honor his wishes. We don't meet with Freyja again until we make our way through Enir Elim, where Needle Knight Leda pits her forces against us, so that we do not get the chance to defeat the promised consort and kindly Miquella. During this fight, Freyja will face us, and she says,
I could not hope for a worthier foe. This is our moment. Let's make it something to remember.
We can finally give Freyja the confrontation she always wanted. A battle between true warriors, each fighting for what they believe is the right path for the lands between, either guided by kindly Miquella or our tarnished, regardless of our goal. Upon her death, she can say to us,
We're fine. In your part, truly a glorious battle. It was.
Unlike what she believed for her master, it seems an honorable death in battle is enough for Freyja. And once the dust has settled, we can take a moment to pay our respects to this warrior. While I truly believe that Freyja thought she understood Radahn, Jaren's words still ring true in my head. That the Conqueror of the Stars wanted an honorable death above all else, and that we were right to deliver it to him. While Radahn may have made a promise to Miquella to be his consort, the responsibility of protecting the lands between by holding back the stars clearly took precedence. If Miquella's plan was always to revive Radahn after having Melania kill him, which didn't quite take, then it's a betrayal of his final wishes for himself. Sure, Freyja believed that war suited General Radahn better than the peace of an honorable death, but that was a misguided idea, from a woman who only saw the side of her lord that lived for battle. She failed to consider the other side of Radahn, his intelligence, his noble spirit, his willingness to sacrifice himself for the safety of the lands between. And in that, she misunderstood who her liege was. Yes, Freyja was always loyal, but siding with Leda to revive Radahn's soul so that he could wage war as Miquella's consort makes her the most misguided of all the Redmanes. Thank you for joining us for our exploration of Redmane Freyja, the royal guard of Starscourge Radahn. What did you think of our breakdown of her story? Was Freyja wrong to believe that Radahn would welcome being revived after he finally attained the honorable death he and Jaren agreed upon? How did Miquella heal Freyja without a golden needle? How did Freyja know of Ansbach's prowess as a warrior? Do you think we should have been able to swing her to our side in the battle against Leda? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and set notifications to all so you never miss out on any of our lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden lore. The denizens of the Land of Shadow are well accustomed to tragedy, whether they're the ones inflicting it or they're suffering themselves. We know how the practices of this land subjugated the shamans and used their malleable flesh in unspeakable experiments, all for the sake of the Hornsent's religious goals. But even those who were Hornsent themselves were twisted into blood fiends, turned into flymen, and had their homes razed by Messmer's flames as he purged the land in the name of Queen Marika. Suffice to say, the culture of the Hornsent stands hand in hand with tragedy, and Miquella's follower, referred to only by the name of his people, is no exception. Hornsent is a man seeking vengeance for all those who once called the Land of Shadow home, and while we never learn his true name, his tale is one of the more interesting our primary NPCs in Shadow of the Erdtree has to offer, as our actions either help him fulfill his deepest wish, or break him entirely. When meeting the various allies who accompany us across the Land of Shadow, Hornsent can be encountered alongside Freyja, who tells us a small bit about him.
I wonder why the eternally dour fellow keeps his distance. He's one of the tower's Hornsent. I can only assume he fights for his own reasons and carries his own burdens, but we needn't concern ourselves with his affairs. He too was charmed by kindly Miquella and guided here, and that makes us allies. We're not gods, you and I. Even if we did manage to dig up the secrets of his past, I doubt our meddling could ever amount to much.
This doesn't tell us much, as we have no context at this point to know what a Hornsent is, but we do know that for now, he's on our side. We can speak with him ourselves, and he urges us to follow in Miquella's footsteps.
Another. Treading the heels of Miquella. Then, as that woman would surely say, we are in our purposes well aligned. But understand, your kind are not forgiven. The Earth Tree is my people's enemy. By Marika long betrayed, set aflame. I believe Miquella's apologies when he says our delivery will come, but never will I see your kind as worthy. And yet my oath I cannot overlook. If Miquella it is whom you would seek, then comrade, allow me to give you this. These are the sites of the crosses I found. I urge you, follow after Miquella. As long as you abide by his footfalls, you will be no enemy to me.
Very quickly we understand where Hornsent stands. Though we fight on the same side, he sees us as unforgivable for the atrocities visited upon his land, as we hail from the lands between. It's tough to reconcile, being seen as both an ally and an enemy. Upon leaving Castle Ensis, we see both Leda and Hornsent standing by a piece of Miquella, and Leda can tell us more about Hornsent's origins.
About the Hornsent, are you? True enough. In any other circumstance, he'd be at our throats. Long ago, Queen Marika commanded Sir Messmer to purge the Tower folk, a cleansing by fire. It's no wonder the Hornsent holds the Earth Tree in contempt. That aside, man is by nature a creature of conquest, and in this regard, the Tower folk are no different. They were never saints. They just happened to be on the losing side of a war, but it's still a wretched shame.
This is the first conversation we have laying plain that the Hornsent as a people were victims to Marika and her first son. This man has every right to despise us as people of the Earth Tree, and the new prospective Elden Lord no less. When we encounter Hornsent again, he's still trying to be helpful toward us.
Miquella has said as much himself. He wishes now to throw it all away. He says the act, though undoubtedly painful, will sear clean the Earth Tree's wanton sin. The truth of his claim can be found at each cross. It is evidence enough to earn my belief. Go to the misshapen tree of Umbra. In that forsaken place, blood must spill. The blood of your fellows, the Earth Tree faithful.
Hornsent believes in Miquella's promise to right his mother's wrongs, and that we have come to help him achieve this goal. He points us in the right direction, so that we might do battle with those who sacked his home. But on the way, Miquella's great rune shatters, which allows the true nature of Hornsent to be laid plain. Speaking with him after Miquella's enchantment has been destroyed has him share his true goal with us, the defeat of Messmer the Impaler, the man who burned his home and loved ones.
What remains there to be said? Do you presume us allies even now? Though Miquella's spell is newly broken, I must profess, the spell mattered little. Uphold his covenant, Miquella shall, and in godhood redeem our rueful clan. Then Marika and vilest Earth Tree both will at last be from divinity wrenched. And surely, contented I will be. But first, clear resounds the call of vengeance. The Impaler, Messmer, must pay his due. In vengeance for the flames, my blade I wield. How could I allow myself to forget? Revenge alone assures me peace of mind. Think not to hinder me upon my path, lest you too wish to face the reckoning.
It's at this point Hornsent's quest opens up, because there are multiple outcomes possible. If we speak with Needle Knight Leda, she will share with us her trepidations about her companions, and ask us who we think needs to be weeded out from our band of miscreants. If we suggest Hornsent, she sees wisdom in our words.
Hornsent. On one hand, he trusts Miquella the Kind to bring salvation to his people. With the enchantment lifted, his vengeful passions may once again ignite. But surely he'd be mindful of kindly Miquella's promise. On the other hand, the Hornsent does present his own dangers. Perhaps your concerns are well-founded after all. Allow me some time to mull it over. There you are. It took me long enough, I know. But I've made my decision. I believe it wisest to eliminate the Hornsent. If he were to point his blade at Sir Mesmer or Queen Marika, perhaps it would not matter, but vengeance changes a man. And one day, his blade may turn towards Miquella the Kind. Kindly Miquella is, after all, the true golden child. Even if he discards every last drop of his being, his lineage will always remain. I believe the Hornsent suspects what I have in mind. He never placed his full trust in me, even under the effect of kindly Miquella's spell. He must have recognized something. The scent of the killer that slept within me, the stench of crusted blood. I will follow the Hornsent. To have his revenge on Sir Mesmer, there is only one place he will go. The Black Keep.
From here we have 4 choices. Help Leda murder Hornsent due to his potential to betray Miquella. Defend Hornsent from Leda's attack. Summon Hornsent to help us defeat Mesmer the Impaler. Or ignore his summon sign and face Mesmer ourselves without his help. If we choose to fight Hornsent alongside Leda, he's unsurprised, saying,
So, your mongrel blood shows through at last. I was a fool to expect more of you. Small wonder Miquella employed his spells.
Once we defeat him, we learn the truth of his vengeance, as he says,
Apologies. Oh, mother, wife, and child.
In days now past, Hornsent had a family. His grudge was not just for his people, but his mother, wife, and children were taken from him by Mesmer the Impaler, and following Miquella is his best chance at vengeance. If we choose to help Hornsent, not much changes. We can still summon him for our fight with Mesmer, where he shouts to this demigod,
Mesmer, foe of my beloved people, in vengeance for the flames, my blade I wield.
We can then help him achieve his vengeance and attempt to fill that emptiness within our friend.
Meet again, I see, comrade in arms, upon his end. Did you see Mesmer's face? 'Twas sublime. A very tangle of snakes. To think he dared call us savages, when he himself was most base of all. To say the least, I am to you indebted, yet unquenched remains my thirst for revenge. The death of Mesmer was merely the start. Now comes the piper to collect from Marika, her offspring, and all the Erdtree's denizens. In vengeance for the flames, my blade I wield. If Miquella's redemption soothes the ache that throbs within, demanding blessed vengeance, then I wish not to be by him redeemed.
Unfortunately, Leda's assumption that the death of Mesmer may not be enough to slake Hornsent's thirst comes true, and he plans to turn his blade against any and all who hail from the land of the Erdtree, even us. As we make our way to the Church of the Bud, Hornsent will invade our world and try to cut us down. Regardless of our previous relationship as comrades, fighting side by side to quell the flames of the Impaler, Hornsent will attack with fervor and bloodlust, and we must cut him down in order to proceed. If we choose not to summon him in the fight against Mesmer, He's found after the battle, completely broken.
Cruelty is this? Who would rob me of my one vital purpose? Am I so feeble, witless, dull of blade, that vengeance was never to have been mine? Oh, mother. Oh, most cherished wife and child. It seems vengeance was not mine to enact. Where now should I point my tired blade? Where now should I point my tired blade?
In this scenario, we actually face Hornsent again as he stands by Leda, fully committed to Miquella. Leda manipulates Hornsent's despair in order to utilize him as another weapon for her lord, as his broken spirit has lost all purpose. These various possible quest lines all show us how Hornsent was shaped by tragedy and doomed to have his life end in tragedy as well. But there's more to learn about this man from his set and his weapons. Hornsent wears the caterpillar mask, as well as the braided cord robe, both of which are meant to help him in his quest for vengeance. The caterpillar mask is a grotesque mask constructed from countless solidified caterpillars, a ritual implement of the greater potentates of Bonny Village, used to ward off thoughts of impurity, doubt, temptation, and other wickedness one is vulnerable to while absorbed in divine ritual. This points us toward the idea that perhaps Hornsent was once a potentate, cutting up shamans and stuffing them into jars, but I don't believe that's the case. The potentates wield large cleavers, very different from Hornsent's slender falx, and they wear no clothes aside from undergarments. I think Hornsent wears this mask for its benefits of warding off impurity, doubt, and temptation, all things that may make him stray from his path of vengeance. In fact, I believe falx gives us a better idea of who Hornsent was in times of peace. Curved swords with long sickle-like blades, a pair of weapons made to wield in both hands, forged by a Hornsent in the name of revenge. In vengeance for the flames, my blade I wield. As we learn throughout Shadow of the Erdtree, smithing and the forge are important to Hornsent culture, and if this man could forge his dual blades himself, I believe that may indicate to us that Hornsent was once a blacksmith, a noble profession in his land that likely afforded him a comfortable life with his family. This makes it all the more tragic that they were ripped away from him, and that he needed to use his skills to forge a blade of his own that would cut down Messmer and avenge their deaths. The braided cord robe also helps us see into the mind of Hornsent. Ragged black cloak overlaid with braided cord, attire of a vengeance-seeking Hornsent. The braided cord ties together the vow of the Revenger with the victim's grudges. It must never come undone. With this in mind, we can see that unlike the nearly naked potentates of the Bonny Village, Hornsent wore his braided cords, perhaps one for each member of his family, to represent the loss he's endured and his vow to hold it close until his revenge is complete. The Hornsent Seeker of Revenge never shares his name with us, nor can we learn it from our compatriots or any item description in Shadow of the Erdtree. Instead, we simply refer to him as Hornsent, and in this way, he becomes the face of his people. He carries the anguish of their destroyed land on his shoulders, as he fights to bring justice to the man who burned the very souls of so many. This faceless avenger can be seen as a representation of the will of all Hornsent to take back their land from the oppressors who subjugated it. However, no man can be a symbol alone. While we never learn his name, underneath the mask, Hornsent was a son, a husband, and a father, who had all the most important people of his life taken from him, burned by Messmer's flame until they were naught but ash. Hornsent may claim to fight for the will of his people, in vengeance for the flames, but he calls those very people rueful, as if to acknowledge that they performed acts that led them to their demise. In truth, those Hornsent wishes to avenge are those closest to him, his family. Avenging the rest of his people is merely a cover for a more selfish, if truly understandable, desire. It's a shame that Hornsent could not let go of his lust for vengeance, even after Miquella's defeat. If he never attacked us outside of the Church of the Bud, perhaps he would have witnessed our ascension as Elden Lord, and we could have done something to quell his anger. But then again, once you're lost so deeply in your pursuit of vengeance, is there really any way out? Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Elden Lore as we explored the tragedy of Hornsent, our ally and enemy. Why do you think Hornsent donned the caterpillar mask on his quest for vengeance? Was he a potentate, stuffing shamans into jars? Or a blacksmith, with the knowledge to forge fine blades? Did he truly wish to avenge his people, or did he want to cut down Messmer to avenge his family? How is Hornsent so easily swayed if he's denied his revenge? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and set notifications to all so you never miss out on any of our lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden Lore. After entering the Land of Shadows for the first time, we're quick to meet our companions and search for kindly Miquella. Among those we encounter first, we have Leda, a knight of Miquella, Freyja, a warrior of Redmane, Hornsent, a man out for revenge, Sir Moore, a man who likes to find things, and Sir Ansbach, a former pure-blood knight who's left the Mohgwyn dynasty in order to serve a new lord. Each of these characters has their own path and motivations, but one among them seems to be the only one who understands just how dangerous Miquella truly is. Sir Ansbach may be the oldest of the troop, but his blade is unmatched, and he's seen firsthand how the hearts of men can be bent to do the bidding of an Empyrean. His quest is fairly straightforward, but it reveals a side of kindly Miquella none of our other compatriots do, while also shedding light on the tragedy of Luminary Mohg, the Lord of Blood. Today we will explore Ansbach, the scholar who believes not in the strength of gods, but of men. When we first meet Ansbach, much like the rest of his troop, he's under the influence of Miquella's enchantment. He's quick to greet us and give us some background on his skill when he was a younger man.
The Tarnished. I am Ansbach, formerly in service to Lord Mohg, but now, like you, another soul guided by kindly Miquella. I'm hardly the steady hand I once was. My fighting days are far behind me, which is why I have chosen to dedicate myself to investigation, to discern tender Miquella's ultimate purpose. I'd rather not volunteer service to a new master unless I know that I can be of use.
He's quick to tell us he previously served Mohg, which is interesting considering our understanding that Mohg absconded with Miquella's cocoon, essentially kidnapping him. You would think he'd be more hesitant to admit he may have played a part in Mohg's machinations, but we'll learn more about the reason he's so forthright later. Ansbach, it seems, is searching for the crosses left behind by Miquella as he walked the land, and he's quick to turn to us for assistance.
May I request a service of you? 6 crosses identical to this one have been discovered in these lands. They are akin to tender Miquella's footprints, or gravestones, which mark what he's left behind. If you discover any more crosses, be certain to tell me. I presume you, too, are keen to know just what kind Miquella is doing here.
Whether we find these crosses for him or not will not affect our relationship with the man, but a few of these lead to interesting comments. If we find where Miquella divested himself of his eye, Ansbach will say,
I am much obliged. I can hardly believe it. He's divested himself of his very eye. Tender Miquella's eye is no mere morsel of flesh. It is a vessel of soaring grace, proof of his Empyrean lineage. I wonder, does Miquella the Kind intend to sever his very birthright? his fate as a child of the Erd Tree.
This is an incredibly interesting tidbit. The idea that an Empyrean's eye is a proof of their lineage. It brings to mind the fact that Malenia was an Empyrean, but an unfit vessel, and no longer has her eyes. Eyes in general have interesting implications throughout Elden Ring, but this is a new development in our understanding of Empyreans. Ansbach will also speak on St. Trina if we find the cross where Miquella cast her away, telling us he has divested himself of even that, his adoring other self, his blossom of slumber. The use of the term his other self is important, because it reflects the way Marika spoke of Radagon, calling him her other self, and shows how Trina truly was part of Miquella, and not a separate person entirely. After finding enough of these crosses for Ansbach, he will tell us.
Righteous Tarnished, I have reasoned through my findings concerning kind Miquella's intentions, why he is here. The full picture is yet to coalesce, but we do know that he is bound for the Tower of Shadow, and that is where he intends to rise to true godhood. The Tower of Shadow houses a divine gateway. A well-kept secret it was, but the gateway was once the birthplace of a god we know all too well.
This is the first we hear of the gateway, and by his manner of speaking, we know the god he's referring to is Queen Marika herself. So it is that Ansbach is our best source of truly understanding what exactly is happening in the Land of Shadow, even after Miquella's Great Rune breaks, and we learn more about who this man truly is without his enchantment. Should we speak to him after seeing the message that the Great Rune has been broken, he tells us of his experience with Miquella before reaching the Land of Shadow.
Miquella has discarded his Great Rune. The fog that vexed my aging faculties has been lifted, and follies better left forgotten haunt me once again. Once, in an attempt to free Lord Mohg from his enchantment, I challenged tender Miquella, only to have my own heart rather artfully stolen. I knew not how weak I was. I believed that with sufficient mastery, even an Empyrean would be within reach of my blade. I could not have been more mistaken. Miquella the Kind is a monster, pure and radiant. He wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men. There is nothing more terrifying. Righteous Tarnished, Miquella the Kind makes my blood run cold. I am loath to admit it, but even at this very instant I wish to run very far away indeed.
Ansbach is forthright with us. He believed that the gods were not above men, and that his steady hand could protect his lord from Miquella's influence. But unfortunately, he was not up to the task. That said, he seems to be the only one of this group who understands the horror of Miquella's ability to change the hearts of anyone he may have use of. The armor and weapons of Sir Ansbach help us to see what kind of warrior he once was as a pureblood knight of Luminary Mohg. The wise man's mask is described as the iron mask of Sir Ansbach, giving the appearance of a quiet, wise, old bearded man. But an old fear lurks beneath, together with the cold, unflinching discipline that once honed his blade, now employed to enhance blood oath and dynastic skills. Ansbach's attire tells us the embroidered crest of the pureblood knights has now all but faded away. Ansbach understood that keeping his oath to his old master was not an act of logic, nor would it bear any justice, but it was for these very reasons he was unable to let go. From this we learn that this knight of a dead dynasty held fast to his oath to Mohg, for no reason other than loyalty. He would seek to honor the memory of his lord by avenging his downfall. Ansbach's longbow doesn't tell us much outside of the fact that its wielder must have extraordinary dexterity, but his scythe, the obsidian lamina, tells us a bit more. Signature weapon of the pureblood knight Ansbach, a viciously keen and slender scythe made for combat. The obsidian edge relies not upon trickery to fulfill its violent purpose. Through skill alone, the wielder can rip and rend through foes, sowing blossoms of red upon the battlefield. As if we needed even more confirmation of Ansbach's prowess with letting blood, we have the incantation, Furious Blade of Ansbach. Incantation of Ansbach, Pure Blood Knight, produces a blood flame blade from the side of the hand, then lunges at enemies to cleave through them. Markedly different from the finesse swordplay of the Dynast, this is an aggressive last resort of an incantation that gave rise to Ansbach's fearsome reputation. So we now understand that this man is not just a scholar, but he was the most fearsome warrior among Mohg's forces. While he may demean himself by focusing on his age and inability to face a demigod, Ansbach was a fearsome warrior, and that should make Miquella stealing his heart all the more terrifying. From this point forward, we'll mostly be interacting with Ansbach in the specimen storehouse of the Shadowkeep, where he's poring through text, trying to figure out Miquella's true intentions.
Righteous Tarnished. It's been some time. After unburdening my soul to you, I had hoped to make a fresh start, but there was one thought I could not dislodge from my mind. So, here I am, quite unable to move on. After Lord Mohg's slaying at his dynastic palace, it appears his body has been absconded with, and taken straight to kind Miquella. Surely you recall that I once served Lord Mohg as a pureblood knight, after failing him in every regard, and losing sight of my vows. I'd do anything to make amends, in whatever meager way I can. What could they possibly have in mind for Lord Mohg's remains? The implications are rather unnerving.
It's during this time in the keep that we see how Ansbach truly did care for his allies, regardless of Miquella's enchantment, as we can inform him about Freyja's decision to uncover the oath made by General Radahn to Miquella sometime in the distant past.
Freyja, by the gods. She must be feeling the need to reaffirm her allegiance before she heads to war. A true Redmane she is, hardly troubled by the rot, but no one is without their shortcomings. She has a hard road ahead. It does make one think. Perhaps our concerns are but two sides of the same coin.
Ansbach had no idea just how close he was to the truth, until we bring him the sacred Right Scroll. Upon seeing the contents of the scroll, Ansbach will share his thoughts.
What's this? Yes, I should have known. Even the truth was itself mere folly. As if using Lord Mohg to gain entrance to the Land of Shadow were not enough, he plans to use his corpse as the vessel of his king consort. He has forsaken Lord Mohg's soul. He desires only his empty shell. It beggars belief, but I'm afraid tender Miquella fails to grasp the humiliation implied by this act. One thing is certain. My dear lord deserved better. Righteous Tarnished. You have my gratitude. You have given me the answers I needed, but I can hardly fathom it. Such folly. Unto the end. I am a warrior, but I've aged. I cannot afford to act hastily. Curse it all. I know my limits. I could spend the rest of my life honing my craft, and still that creature would be out of my blade's reach. The absolute folly of it all.
Ansbach seems to be falling into despair, and given his past, it's hard to blame him. He has challenged Miquella before, and his blade was not enough. So how could he challenge him again and expect a different outcome? Perhaps with allies. After leaving Ansbach with his thoughts, he'll give us a letter for Freyja to help her along her path for answers.
Just Tarnished. Could you please give this to Freyja? Thanks to you, she too will have the answers she requires. Freyja possesses a youth I no longer have. This knowledge will surely stoke the flames of valor within her. Yes. I can see her barreling into the fray right now, Perhaps I shouldn't meddle in her affairs, but this is the only way I can help.
After sharing this letter with her and hearing her intent to face him in an honorable battle, he says,
I should have expected as much from Freyja. Some things simply never occur to her. Paralyzing fear. True despair. That's Freyja through and through.
He takes her challenge not as the declaration of an enemy, but the proposal of a worthy warrior and friend. This is where our journey with Ansbach comes to an end, at least for a time. We have the opportunity to either join him in battle against Needle Knight Leda, or fell him by our own hand alongside her, but ignoring this battle will not affect our endgame. We don't meet with Ansbach again until we face what is left of Miquella's forces in Enir Lim. If we followed their quests, we can summon both Ansbach and Thiollier to help us in our desperate struggle against Leda and her companions. And upon winning this fight, we can speak with Ansbach one last time.
Just tarnished. That was an astounding battle, to be sure. Now I suppose this leaves only one, but in truth I cannot calm my quivering. Challenging a god is no small matter.
If asked, he will express how impressed he is with Thiollier, as he previously did not see him as much of a warrior.
Afraid I underestimated the lad. Appearing frail in both body and mind, I presumed he'd be like to stumble upon the field of battle. What a fool I was. He serves another master, but Sir Thiollier performed magnificently. Perhaps he too quivers with anticipation, as do we.
Finally, we have the option to speak with him about Mohg, to divulge the truth, that we are the tarnish that put an end to his lord. But the Honorable Sir Ansbach reacts in a way you may not expect.
Something you want to get off your chest? Well, you needn't worry. It was you, wasn't it? Who defeated Lord Mohg. Fear not. I bear no grudge against you. His Eminence was felled in an honorable duel. And such are the risks of seeking lordship. Besides, what right have I to complain? I blame the enchantment more than anything. Righteous tarnished, we will have our victory. I swear upon my blood.
He believes that lords being felled as they try to rise above others is simply the way of things, and that if Miquella had never charmed Mohg and himself in the first place, you'd never have had to slay him. He still sees us as righteous, and wants to fight alongside us as we challenge a god. Before we enter the final confrontation, we can summon Ansbach, and he tells Redmane it's a pleasure to see him after all this time. But those remains do not belong to him. Lord Mohg will have his dignity. We can see how brilliantly Ansbach fights during this battle, but odds are he will be felled during its course. And when he is, he asks that we become the new Lord of the Lands Between, a lord not for gods, but for men. With that, Ansbach's story ends, as once the battle is over, we can find him lying dead to the side of the arena. He did what he'd set out to do, and avenged his lord. The indignity of destroying Mohg's soul so that Redmane could take his body did not stand, as Mohg's most fearsome pureblood knight stood for his lord against a god he had no chance of defeating. He left the future in our hands, believing we would create a better world than the gods that came before, and it's up to us to decide exactly what that new world will look like. Sir Ansbach sheds light on what the Mohgwyn dynasty may have been before the influence of Miquella. Yes, he wields blood incantations, but his demeanor stands in stark contrast to Vare, a man whose major concern was having us spill blood to slake Mohg's chambers. Ansbach sitting at Mohg's right hand makes it seem as though in the past, the bloody fingers may not have run rampant, cutting down every tarnish they could find. This man of strength and wisdom is likely a symbol of what this dynasty could have been if Miquella had never bewitched Mohg in order to put his plans for godhood into motion. Ansbach's willingness to acknowledge his own weakness and limits, while constantly seeking to improve both his mind and his blade, shows what a pure-blood knight was truly meant to be. If only we could have seen what Luminary Mohg would have been without Miquella's influence. Though to be fair, he did still follow the Formless Mother, so it may not have been much better. Thank you for joining us for this walkthrough of the story and history of Sir Ansbach, pureblood knight and true companion to our Tarnished. Do you believe Ansbach led a troop of pureblood knights before they came to be known as the Bloody Fingers? Did he and Vare have a contentious relationship while serving Mohg? What did the Mohgwyn dynasty look like before Miquella's influence affected all of Mohg's decisions? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and set notifications to all so you never miss out on any of our lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden Lore. In this series, we've covered almost all of the followers of kindly Miquella that helped us along our journey through the Land of Shadow. Leda leads the charge for her lord. Ansbach fights back against the defilement of his. Freyja chooses to side with those who would bring Redmane back to life. Thiollier chooses to make St. Trina's final wish come true. Hornsent pursues his vengeance, and Dane fights us in service of Miquella. Each of these characters is a warrior in their own right, whether they fight with blades, fists, or poisons. But there's one more of their band that was simply not built for battle. Mor is a simple merchant who truly enjoys finding trinkets and curiosities for those who he holds close as allies. He's covered from head to toe in thick armor and wields no weapon, but carries an oversized shield. His relationship to Miquella's other followers and the Forager brood is compelling, as it comes across as wholly unselfish. So let's take a closer look at the final member of Miquella's followers and see what we can learn about the man behind the pot. When we enter the Land of Shadow, we meet a number of Miquella's followers that lead us towards Ballarat Tower in search of Miquella's discarded flesh. Alongside the Honorable Sir Ansbach, there's an unassuming knight donning armor with an unusual color that looks to be weighing him down. We can ask this learned scholar about him, and Ansbach will tell us.
It must mean Sir Mor. Sir Mor is a kind and stalwart ally. He provisions our little outfit. Sir Mor traffics with the Forager brood, his brethren, who collect supplies from all corners of the land. No doubt they find inspiration in his many virtues. These are not your foes, Tarnished. Should you spot any Forager brood, be sure to mind your manners.
Who exactly the Forager brood are, we'll get to later. For now, let's focus on Mor. He's perched behind a pot, and when you speak with him, his words come softly to us.
Together, we work. Together, for Miquella the Kind. Many things we have found. I like finding things. For you, Lady Leda, her allies, and the Forager brood. Things bring joy to all.
This tells us all we need to know about our bulky boy. He speaks plainly, and he enjoys his place as a provisioner and outfitter of Needle Knight Leda and her allies. If we visit him often enough, he comes to see us as a compatriot and tells us as much.
You come often. You enjoy things. I like finding things. I like you.
The only way to learn more about Mor at this point is to follow Thiolier's questline. After we meet Thiollier, Mor speaks with us again.
I know. Give this to Thiollier. He asked me to find it. I finally found it.
This item, the black syrup, reads, an ebony black syrup held in an unglazed jar. Mor asked that this be delivered to Thiollier, an unknown liquid apparently gathered and aged by the Forager brood. This tells us more about the culture of the Forager brood. They have a knack for chemistry, it seems. We can take this mysterious black syrup to Thiollier, and he says,
What's this? I have to say, Sir Mor has an awfully sharp eye, doesn't he? It's wonderful. This ebony, as lustrous as the night sky unending. I don't think I could ever thank him enough, but I'll have to think of something.
As we already know, Sir Moore is very good at his job, but we never actually see him leave his post outside Ballarat. So how did he discover these deep purple lilies? Simply put, he has the help of the Forager Brood. The Forager Brood are confusing. They're essentially kindred of rot. However, they do not attack us on sight. Actually, they'll ignore us altogether unless we approach them. Once we do, they will hand us a Forager Brood cookbook that gives us the ability to craft an item that grants a large stat boost. These items even tell us the effects of the Forager Brood's pickled delights are enhanced by the fermentation, or rotting, of the ingredients. Though this results in a pungent odor, some come to find the aroma irresistible. These kindred of rot are unlike the red variations we see in the Land of Shadow and closely resemble those found in the lands between. But they seem to worship the goddess of rot by fermenting the items they find around the world, focusing more on the life aspect of the cycle of rot. They've somehow bonded with Moore, perhaps through shared interest or maybe by raising him as one of their own, and they're essentially his boots on the ground, gathering resources and knowledge which they relay to this merchant. If we go out of our way to meet with each member of the Forager Brood, even help one who's fallen cold, we do Moore a great service, and he will appreciate your companionship. The Forager Brood cookbooks further drive home their partnership with Moore, a record of crafting techniques left by the non-human Forager Brood, shared out of kindness towards Moore and his kin. If we meet with all of the brood, Moore will even reward us with the 7th cookbook, which tells us something a little different. A record of crafting techniques left by the non-human Forager Brood, shared out of kindness toward their savior, whose name was unknown. Perhaps the savior whose name is unknown is actually us, but more important are the items this cookbook teaches us to make: the spirit raisin and the charming branch. Aside from the DLC announcement image showing us Miquella riding Torrent, this item is the only thing about Shadow of the Erdtree to tie these two together. One of Torrent's favorite treats, and a branch with a sliver of Miquella's power. This aside, the mystery remains. What does Moore have to do with the Forager Brood? I believe his armor and shield hold the answer. The verdigris armor set tells us it is made from an unusual metal known as verdigris. Verdigris is said to be the gift of an outer god, possessed of an enormously hefty yet supple strength thanks to its rusted nature. Both the armor and the verdigris great shield are made of this unique metal. But what outer god could possibly be connected to rust? What is rust but metal's rot? Moore in some way is directly tied to the goddess of rot, and regardless of whether he himself was gifted this armor, or it was passed down to him, it's likely that this is why he was seen as a friend to the Forager Brood. Upon seeing him wear the metal of their god, these creatures likely fell in line behind him. If we consider the idea that Moore may have received this armor from Malenia, then the Forager Brood would be of those kindred of rot who once resided at the Halig Tree. Perhaps Moore's connection to Miquella and his sister is older than we know, and he was enchanted specifically because he was a kind soul who Miquella trusted to take care of his allies. Upon the shattering of Miquella's Great Rune, things became more complicated for Moore.
Don't feel it. It's broken. Kind Miquella's light is gone. But I stand tall. Together, we work. Together. For Miquella the Kind. I don't know what to do. Our mother abandoned her brood. She did not love us. We are her children. What should we do? Must we be sad forever?
For me, this line of dialogue solidifies the idea that Malenia is the goddess referred to by Moore's armor, and that Moore himself was likely raised among the kindred of rot as one of their own. This would explain his strange way of speaking, as if he's uncertain of every word, barely able to get them out. As Gowry told us, Malenia abandoned the kindred of rot, which means she could have abandoned Moore as well. We can then choose to tell Moore to either put his feelings behind him or remain sad forever. Neither are very good options, but we can also choose to simply tell him we don't know what this means for him. If we tell him to put the pain behind him, he says,
Maybe that's kindly Miquella's love. Love for all the unloved. Love to banish the pain.
which leads to him siding with Leda against us in order to fight for Miquella. If we tell him to remain sad forever, we will eventually come across his corpse outside the Church of the Crusade, but there's no true explanation as to why. The best option in my eyes is to say we don't know what Mor should do next, and in doing so, we spare him from a terrible fate either way. If we choose not to influence Mor, he will simply stay at his little jar, selling us items as needed, and will even sit out the final battle with Lady Leda. He may not fight by our side against Redmane, but he survives, the only member of Miquella's troop who can successfully do so. After defeating Mesmer, he will tell us,
I don't know how to be still. I have my brood. I enjoy foraging. It is enough.
but after we defeat the promised consort Redmane, he will say,
My brood is no more. No one comes to visit. Not Lady Leda. Not Father Dane. Not Sir Ansbach. Not Freyja. Not Thiollier. Not the Hornsent. Where have they all gone? Thank you. No one comes to visit. Except you.
It is sad to think that all of Mor's compatriots met death either at our hand or that of kindly Miquella and his consort. But as some small consolation, Mor still gets to walk away with his life. It's fitting that the most gentle member of our DLC compatriots is the only one with the potential to make it through the Land of Shadow in one piece. Not only that, he's our only tie, be it an ambiguous one, to Malenia in Shadow of the Erdtree. As long as we treat the Forager brood with respect, and we don't pretend to have the answers to Mor's larger questions, we can enjoy a long and fruitful relationship with our favorite vendor. I only wish we could bring him with us to the lands between, so he's not trapped in the Land of Shadow, forever waiting for compatriots who will never return to his side. At least he has us, and should we finish our journey, it's never bad to be friends with the Elden Lord. Thank you for joining us for a closer look at Mor, the gentle knight who defends the foragers. Do you believe the verdigris armor directly ties Mor and his specific forager brood to Malenia? Did you kill the forager brood, thinking they were regular enemies, and face the wrath of Mor? Is his name meant to portray a need for more foraging, more things? After all, things bring joy to all. Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and set notifications to all, so you never miss out on any of our lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden Lore. Up until now, we followed the stories of many who pledged their lives to the demigods. From knights bearing the banners of those who fought to rule the lands between, to the warrior and tactician who served the Lady of the Moon. There have been many who take up the call to serve. We recently took a closer look at Needle Knight Leda and her order of knights which served Miquella before she cut them down for wavering in their devotion. But there's one who followed Miquella's path even before Leda. Dryleaf Dane is a martial artist and member of an old order who chose to believe in Miquella's power and promise. Through his own ascetic training, Dane developed a style of fighting that saw him take to the Land of Shadow without a blade, instead turning his very body into a weapon. Silent as the night, there is more below the surface when it comes to this stoic warrior. So join us as we piece together the story of Dryleaf Dane by exploring the Dryleaf Order of Clergymen. The most we can learn about Dane himself is told to us through Needle Knight Leda when we ask her about her compatriots.
That man is known as Dane. He's been in the service of Miquella the Kind longer than I. He might be solemn of cheer, but is a fierce warrior nevertheless. There's no cause for concern. Dane's reluctance to speak to you is no fault of your own. We've been acquainted for quite some time, but even I am yet to hear his voice. Perhaps one day.
It's not a lot to go on, but the most important piece of information here is just how long Dane has been in service to Miquella. We can assume Needle Knight Leda has been with him for some time, but to put both her and Dane's service somewhere on the timeline of the events of Elden Ring, we need to look at an item hidden in the Land of Shadow, the Dryleaf Seal. Sacred seal of the spiritual seekers known as the Dryleaf Sect. Enhances incantations which conjure golden rings of light. Those who saw the decline of the Erd Tree in the fallen leaves long ago braced themselves for the weakening of the Order and embraced a strict faith. And then, they made to serve a new god. The term fallen leaves should make any of us raise an eyebrow upon reading it, because as we know, the fallen leaves tell a story. We can assume that the leaves of the Erd Tree only began to fall after the shattering, as the story they tell is that of the many wars between the demigods. Keeping this in mind, it would seem the Dryleaf Sect was founded soon after this event, perhaps being seen by those in the Lands Between as a type of doomsday cult that believed the shattering of the Elden Ring meant the end of the Golden Order, and so they would need a new god to follow. Perhaps this order does not find solace in weakness. Given that this seal enhances golden rings of light, it's safe to assume they believe this new god would be Miquella the Kind. Interestingly, those that joined the Dryleaves were seen as a type of clergyman, as the description of their robes tells us. Sun-faded and lightly soiled travel attire worn by clergymen. The gold necklace found under the breast belongs to a group of spiritual seekers known as the Dryleaf Sect. This sect rejects dependence on others in all matters of faith, seeking self-discipline and self-sufficiency above all else. This concept of self-discipline has been seen before in the Lands Between, and has been associated with others following a religious path. Like the Curseblades and Elamar of the Briar, the bell-bearing hunter, the Dryleaf Sect practiced asceticism as a means of gaining strength through rigorous self-denial. However, unlike Elamar, who took up the sword, or the Curseblades, whose asceticism was meant to turn them into tutelary deities, the Dryleaves followed this practice much like warrior monks, and trained their bodies to become lethal weapons. Why they believed attaining physical strength and discipline to be the path forward in better serving their god is a mystery. The Dryleaf arts are a unique weapon in Elden Ring, and they let us fight with our bare hands against the many horrors we can face in these lands. The Dryleaf arts are described as a technique for hand-to-hand combat without the aid of a weapon. The martial art combines fist strikes and kicks, the teachings of a group of spiritual seekers known as the Dryleaf Sect, revealed only to those of worthy valor and character. The practice of this martial art marks the dawn of an ascetic's journey. These warrior monks were also known as spiritual seekers, and knowing that they carried their own seal dedicated to the incantations of kindly Miquella, I believe they found the new god they were seeking, as it seems Miquella only made himself known to those he wanted to be aware of his presence. In this case, that makes Dane a very special member of the Dryleaf Sect, as he was considered devoted enough to be brought under Miquella's enchantment, and followed him closely before even Needle Knight Leda. Through the descriptions of Dane's hat and his personal Dryleaf arts, we get an idea of what set him apart from others of his order. Dane's hat tells us it is the sun-faded and lightly soiled hat of Dryleaf Dane. Worn low over the eyes, it obscures the wearer's vision. Meeting the gaze of another can overcome the senses, often leading to the downfall of those who would walk the noble and solitary seeker's path. It's fair to assume this item was originally unique to Dane. While his order of ascetics believed in stripping themselves of earthly items, it's likely Dane saw his hat as a way to better follow through on his training, rather than a vain accessory. By obscuring his vision, Dane ensured that he would not meet the eyes of his opponents, and be whipped into a frenzy for battle. Even his fighting would be controlled, tempered by his extreme ascetic views. Through the use of his hat, his martial arts would remain passionless and more effective than any other member of the Dryleaf sect. I believe this is what led the rest of the Dryleaves to adopt this accessory for themselves. Dane also has his own unique style of fighting aside from the regular Dryleaf arts. Dane's footwork is known as a technique for hand-to-hand combat without the aid of a weapon. The martial art focused on kicking techniques. This kick-based martial art is unique to Dane, a Dryleaf and sworn ally of Leda. He acquired these skills by training with the aid of a waterfall, letting the water beat his body and throwing himself into its basin. Dane, unlike the rest of his order, dedicated himself so thoroughly to his training that he was able to incorporate not only his fists, but also kicks into his personal style of combat. The imagery of a monk sitting beneath a waterfall in order to obtain new clarity and power is essentially a cliché at this point, but it goes a long way in showing us who Dane was and how hard he pushed himself to be a better tool for kindly Miquella. In fact, this is where we find the Dryleaf set, beside a corpse underneath a waterfall, who likely fell prey to the enemies nearby, dying in his pursuit of the same arts Dane himself perfected. While Dane does not speak a word to us, not even when challenging us to a sparring match, we get to hear his voice in our final confrontation with Leda and her companions in Anir Alim. Upon defeating him, he says,
Miquella, in Godhood shall you rise.
It's worth noting that it's possible to save or kill every other member in this merry band of Miquella's followers before reaching this final chamber. But no matter what you do, you will always do battle with at least Dane and Leda, the two followers of Miquella, who chose their god, likely before they were ever enchanted. Unfortunately for Dane, this is where he will meet his end in the Land of Shadow, regardless of what quest lines we've chosen to follow. In the end, his dedication to Miquella and his ascetic practices were deeply intertwined, and he was only our ally as long as we towed the line for his god. Dane used to offer his services against Rolana the Twin Moon Knight, and still does against Romina, Saint of the Bud. He encourages us after defeating him in a sparring match by leaving a letter that says, "Grow not complacent, continue to temper your strength." It's another one of Dane's letters that tells us we need Messmer's kindling to burn the sealing tree and reach Miquella. Much like Leda, it seems as though we are nothing but a tool to Dane, a tarnished who doesn't know when to quit, and must be brought down should we threaten his lord's claim to the lands between. Just as with so many others, Dane falls to our tarnished on our road to conquer all we survey. But what's especially poetic is that we can defeat Dane using the very martial arts taught to us by his order. Dane can be his own undoing, and no amount of ascetic practice will ever prepare you for an angry tarnished, ready to take their seat on the Elden throne. Thank you for joining us for a closer look at Dane and the Dryleaf sect of warrior monks. Did you want to see more of Dryleaf Dane throughout Shadow of the Erdtree? Was the Dryleaf sect founded immediately after the Shattering, when the leaves of the Erdtree began to fall to the ground? Was Dane ever under Miquella's enchantment, or was he already so deeply devoted to his lord that it was unnecessary? Why do you think the Dryleaf sect focused so heavily on honing their bodies and minds? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and set notifications to all, so you never miss out on any of our lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden lore. As I'm sure you've realized by now, Shadow of the Erdtree is more than just a simple expansion to Elden Ring. The Land of Shadow is the size of Limgrave, sure, but what Miyazaki failed to tell us is that it happens to be several Limgraves stacked on top of each other. With that said, I'm still exploring this land, gathering materials. I've taken down bosses, and gathered enough Scadutree shards To follow in the steps of kindly Miquella, I've fought my way to the end of this story, and in doing so, I've managed to uncover the full stories of all of our companions in the Land of Shadows. And one in particular seems to align with my pre-DLC release theories on a certain character. Needless to say, there are spoilers ahead for Shadow of the Erdtree, but I'm willing to bet if you clicked on this video, you saw that coming. This is the story of Thiollier and his love for Saint Trina. The first time we as a community got a look at Thiollier was during the first trailer for Shadow of the Erdtree, when we saw a man in a mask lying on the ground amongst purple flowers. We can find this man near Pillar Path Cross, east of Castle Ensis, sitting by a piece of Miquella that he's discarded. Upon speaking with him, he will share a bit about himself.
Hello there. Are you the Tarnished? Lady Leda spoke of you. Another Tarnished, guided here by Miquella the Kind. My name is Thiollier. I too am Tarnished, and here on kindly Miquella's account.
From here, your interactions with Thiollier will vary based on when you found him. For instance, I hadn't encountered him until after Miquella's spell on Leda and her compatriots was broken, so we took notice to this. If you found Thiollier early enough, you can speak with Moore, who will give you black syrup to deliver to him. After doing so, you can buy Thiolier's concoction, which tells us it is an ebony black concoction mixed by Thiollier, a condensed, somniferous elixir purported to be capable of putting even an ancient dragon to sleep. For an ordinary mortal, a single sip would assuredly result in swift and certain death. Thiollier thought of Saint Trina's sleep when he created this, but the ebony sleep he concocted had not the sweetness of nectar, nor the gentleness of rest's embrace. This is our first look at this Tarnished's obsession with Saint Trina, and after the spell is broken, he will speak to us of his woes.
Feeling rather lost, haunted by memories of Saint Trina, her visage, her scent, the lure of velvety sleep. Would kindly Miquella chasten me for falling for Saint Trina, while knowing that she was the discarded half? The problem is, I simply cannot help it. I would sacrifice everything just to gaze upon her one last time.
At this point, you may have to wait until some time later, and Thiollier will then tell you Moore has given him some information, a lead he must track down. But if you've already found Saint Trina yourself, you can point him in the right direction.
Are you certain of this? Is this all a plot to make a mockery of me? Oh heavens, what am I saying? Forgive me. You deserve my deepest gratitude. I will make the journey to the southern coast, as you say, to venture into the depths of the fissure.
You won't speak with Thiollier again until you make your way through the Stone Temple fissure and find him on the brink of sleep, mere feet away from his personal deity. In order to understand what happens next, it's important to take a look at the armor associated with this Tarnished, which can't actually be obtained without beating the final boss of the DLC. Thiollier's mask tells us it is a mask upon which is carved a tranquil sleeping face. The silver hair is arranged in the same style as Saint Trina's, increasing arcane. Just once, Thiollier was granted the sweet repose of velvety sleep. The remainder of his days would be spent attempting to recapture it. While his mask speaks of his attachment to Trina, his armor speaks of his prowess with poison. The dark attire of those who wield poison in secret. The silver hair is arranged in the same style as Saint Trina's, increasing arcane. Additionally, countless needles are sewn onto the exterior, apparently for talismanic effect. As a merchant, he was able to sell us the deadly perfume poison bottle, which gives us an idea of his past before Trina. Perfume bottle customized by Thiollier. Attacks releasing perfumed powder producing deadly poison. There are some techniques of the perfuming arts that employ poison. Upon learning of this, Thiollier threw himself into mastering those techniques, and he made them his own. So it would seem he may have been a type of perfumer before his chance encounter with Saint Trina. There is another item this Tarnished can drop known as Thiollier's Hidden Needle, which gives an idea of why this particularly congenial man perhaps should not be trusted. Concealed weapon used by Thiollier, of a design generally favored by poison wielders for dark and subtle purposes. Like St. Trina, who blossomed in the deep purple garden, a rich poison is secreted from within, which sends its victims into an eternal sleep. With this context, I believe we can better understand what comes next in this story. When we find him, Thiollier sits before St. Trina herself, and it's just as I theorized in previous videos. She's been cast off by Miquella. The marker we find before encountering her says Miquella abandoned his love, that love being St. Trina. He cast that piece of himself into the depths, just as we saw in the DLC trailer, where he believes no one would find her. But we did, and so did Thiollier. Once we speak to him, he says,
Hello. Thank you. It was all just as you said. To think, without your guidance, I wouldn't have seen St. Trina again. I'm drifting off in the sea of her poison. Soon, I will hear her voice. Let me be. I won't be long. Oh, I almost forgot. You mustn't follow my example. St. Trina's poison would plunge you into an eternal slumber. It must be me, and only me.
We must then drink the nectar of St. Trina multiple times, dying with each attempt and respawning, until Trina speaks to us.
Miquella, stop. Don't turn the poor thing into a god. Godhood would be Miquella's prison. A caged divinity is beyond saving. You must kill Miquella. Grant him forgiveness.
It seems that by casting aside St. Trina, Miquella removed the part of himself that saw the flaws of his plan, instead choosing to blindly march forward. We can share Trina's words with Thiollier, but he's not pleased to hear we've spoken with his love.
Thank you not to lie to me. I am the chosen, not you. Only I can doze off in the sea of St. Trina. Why would you hear her voice when I cannot? If you should utter these cruel untruths to me again, I won't be held responsible for my actions. Please, enough. I cannot believe your cheek, and I will stand for it no longer.
Thiollier will then invade us after resting at the nearby site of grace, using his poisons in an attempt to punish us for conversing with the woman he loves. When we defeat him, we are rewarded with St. Trina's smile. A talisman depicting a smiling St. Trina, a vision conjured deep within a certain man's heart. Raises attack power when sleep is triggered in the vicinity. Only I am allowed to know of your velvety sleep, its sweetly gentle embrace, so please smile for me and only me. The obsession we've seen in Thiollier is rooted deep. He is now beaten on the ground where he once sat, and we can speak with him again.
You... I was no good to anyone. Beginning to end. Weak as a kitten, and thick as two planks. I suppose dying in disgrace is fitting, in a way. Tell me, please, assuming you spoke the truth back then,
What did Centrina tell you? You are a wretched, wretched soul. A nightmare come to plague me. Such a thing could possibly be. Could it? Centrina, please let me hear your voice in my everlasting slumber.
After a line like that, you would expect Thiollier to roll over and die. But he doesn't. He will actually act as an ally moving forward, for the final 2 boss fights of Shadow of the Erdtree, coming to terms with what Centrina has asked of us, and helping in our quest in order to please the woman he loves. Unfortunately, if he does help us, nothing awaits this poor soul but oblivion, as he can be found dead after the final battle. This is just one of the many stories to be told in the Land of Shadow. Each of our new companions has their own journey to follow and history to unfold. Except Dryleaf Dane. I'm sure he's got something going on, but the guy never says a word. Thiollier was a complex man, a patron of the perfumer's arts with a penchant for poisons, a follower of Miquella who fell in love with his alter ego, a man obsessed who wished to possess this god of sleep for himself, never to share her power of beautiful sleep with another. In the end, I like to think we helped Thiollier find some solace. He accepts the truth in Centrina's words and takes up arms on her behalf, alongside our Tarnished. And in this way, he becomes a true comrade, even after shunning us and trying to put us to the sword. This is the story of Thiollier, and we can't wait to bring you everyone else's as well. Thank you for joining us for this lore dive into Shadow of the Erdtree. What do you think of the poisonous perfumer and adherent to Centrina, Thiollier? Was his obsession based in love, or was it the frenzy of an addict who dove too deep into velvety sleep? Do you think he broke free of his own need to control Centrina and keep her to himself, or is helping us simply a means to an end? Whose story should we tell next as I make my way through the Land of Shadow? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and set notifications to all so you never miss out on any of our lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden lore. Who pledges themselves to a demigod in the lands between can tell us a lot about who that demigod is. Ranni has numerous vassals, and while Celavis is a snake lying in wait, E.G. shows himself to be a dedicated soul with his mistress's best interest at heart, and Blaidd shows unshaking loyalty until the fingers themselves break him. Cleanrot Knight Finlay has the strength of will to carry Malenia from Caelid to the Haligtree, essentially across the entire lands between. The Redmanes show themselves to be fearless warriors with the courage to push back against the rot in their homeland, while Jaren puts his life on hold in order to make sure Radahn can have a proper death. So what of kindly Miquella? His forces at the Haligtree seem to be cookie-cutter knights, with a bit more power behind their swings, and those that follow him into the Land of Shadow needed to be enchanted into coming along. Freyja stays loyal due to Radahn's revival. Mor cares more for the Forager brood than anything else. Dryleaf Dane seems to side with Miquella due to religion, and his other followers join our cause in the end, except for Needle Knight Leda. Leda stays truly loyal to Miquella and Miquella alone, and is willing to kill her companions if she believes they are wavering. In fact, the murderous intent of this White Knight may be our best window into what Miquella has become in order to attain his goals. Today, we dissect the leader of Miquella's band of warriors, Needle Knight Leda, and try to understand what it meant to be an Oathseeker. The first time we heard Leda's voice was in the story trailer for Shadow of the Erdtree, and while she did give us the context we needed to better understand this land, we didn't learn anything about her specifically. We speak to her ourselves upon visiting Miquella's cocoon after defeating Luminary Moog.
Were you guided here by kindly Miquella? I am Leda. And like you, I was guided by faith along his honorable path. Touch the withered arm, and you too will be transported to the realm of shadow where Miquella the Kind now dwells. My compatriots are there already. Like us, they have heard kindly Miquella's call. If you can find them, they are certain to lend you aid. Come now, touch the withered arm, and travel to the realm of shadow. I will not be far behind. May we meet again.
Leda makes it seem as if she too has only just answered Miquella's call, but that seems highly unlikely. It would make more sense if she simply waits by the cocoon for new followers, so that she can determine their worth. As we make our way through the beginning areas of the Land of Shadow, we can meet many of these compatriots Leda spoke of, but it's not until we get through Castle Ensis that Leda makes herself known to us again. We can choose to have her fight at our side against R'hllana, or simply speak with her after leaving the castle in order to learn more about our compatriots.
Hello again. Did you meet my compatriots? They're quite the congregation, from places as far and wide as you can imagine. Doubtless they'd have all come to blows at first glance, were it not for the charm kindly Miquella put upon us. This is what allows us to serve together, the work of a living god.
From here, Leda can give us information on both Hornsent and Dryleaf Dane, but she continues to stay tight-lipped about herself. In fact, we can learn nothing more from Needle Knight Leda until after Miquella's Great Rune is shattered. Upon making our way to the Shadow Keep, the Great Rune of kindly Miquella is destroyed, and his enchantments are undone. Every member of his merry band of followers will begin to show their true colors, and this is true of Leda as well.
Hello. Did you feel it? Miquella the Kind's enchantment appears to have broken, but while my devotion to kindly Miquella remains unchanged, by my troth I am not so sure about the others. No, wait. Perhaps this is a blessing in disguise. I can wield my sword to cull the undeserving, those unfit to bask in tender Miquella's presence. I should have thought of this earlier. Right. It's time to begin ferreting out those of us who don't deserve to be at kindly Miquella's side.
This is an alarming turn for the Needle Knight to take, immediately considering that her companions may want to stand in the way of her lord, and that it's her duty to put them to the sword before they can even try. If we suggest she look into Thiollier, she dismisses the idea, due to a misunderstanding of just what St. Trina is.
It's true. His devotion to St. Trina is plain to see. I fear his vows to Miquella the Kind are merely secondary, but for this very reason, Thiollier is incapable of betrayal. St. Trina's love for kind Miquella is boundless. She is, after all, his other half. Or perhaps her feelings go beyond even that. Even if she was left behind, I doubt her heart would waver.
As we who follow Thiellier's quest know, Leda's assertion about Trina's loyalty is wrong, perhaps revealing a flaw in her perspective, as she's able to temper her distrustful nature for an aspect of Miquella, believing it cannot possibly disagree with her lord. We are also able to suggest looking into Hornsent, and this is where we begin to see Leda's lust for blood.
The Hornsent. On one hand, he trusts Miquella the Kind to bring salvation to his people. With the enchantment lifted, his vengeful passions may once again ignite. But surely he'd be mindful of kindly Miquella's promise. On the other hand, the Hornsent does present his own dangers. Perhaps your concerns are well-founded after all. Allow me some time to mull it over. There you are. It took me long enough, I know. But I've made my decision. I believe it wisest to eliminate the Hornsent. If he were to point his blade at Sir Mesmer or Queen Marika, perhaps it would not matter. But vengeance changes a man. And one day, his blade may turn towards Miquella the Kind. Kindly Miquella is, after all, the true golden child. Even if he discards every last drop of his being, his lineage will always remain. I believe the Hornsent suspects what I have in mind. He never placed his full trust in me, even under the effect of kindly Miquella's spell. He must have recognized something. The scent of the killer that slept within me, the stench of crusted blood. I will follow the Hornsent. To have his revenge on Sir Mesmer, there is only one place he will go. The Black Keep.
Leda is correct, as once we reach Mesmer's chamber, we're able to summon Hornsent to help us defeat the Impaler. But if we choose to do battle with Hornsent alongside Leda, she'll speak with us again.
There you are. Well fought. You have my gratitude. He was never going to see eye to eye with us, but his words were ill-founded. It was hard to hear, I know. I know I shouldn't let myself, but I suppose it's only natural to feel the weight of one's deeds at times like these. There is plenty left to be done, and I will see to it.
Before discussing the next steps in this quest, I want to talk about the armor Needle Knight Leda wears, as it can give us some idea of her past. Aside from her chest armor, Leda wears the Oathseeker set, which tells us it is black with gold ornamentation. These knights set off on quests of discovery, hoping to find by themselves an oath of their own choosing to serve in perfect lifelong devotion. We can find this armor in the Church of Benediction, a place, it would seem, these knights start their journeys. A benediction is described as a short prayer or blessing that expresses good wishes or asks for divine help and guidance. So it would make sense that a church dedicated to this idea is where an Oathkeeper would start their journey. But it brings up an interesting question. Is Leda originally from the Land of Shadow? I don't believe this can be confirmed one way or the other, but due to the description of Leda's armor, it seems she must have known Miquella well before the Land of Shadow was locked away. Chest armor of Needle Knight Leda, embroidered with a golden cross-tree motif. The chalk-white cloak and surcoat symbolize the honor of the Needle Knights. Kindly Miquella fashioned us as his needles to quell all, to ward away all. Given this description, we can safely assume that Leda was not the only Needle Knight, and that they based themselves on the concept of Miquella's needle, which warded away the meddling of the outer gods. After defeating Hornsent, Leda rewards you with a talisman, the Lacerating Cross Tree, which tells us a little more about the Needle Knights. Handicraft depicting a golden cross tree, one of the items conferred to the Needle Knights. Long ago, the Needle Knights were in service of Miquella, but now they are no more, save for one. Leda is the last Needle Knight. Her sword holds the secret as to why this is. It tells us it is a light greatsword with gold inlaid. Weapon of Leda, the Needle Knight. Deals holy damage. Though polished to a mirror sheen, this blade still reeks with the stench of crusted blood that lingers from the cull of her knightly comrades. Leda murdered the rest of the Needle Knights, almost definitely because she saw them as wavering in their dedication to Miquella. After all, we know that none of Miquella's knights ever claimed the Miquellan Knight's sword, and perhaps it was considered an ill-fated blade because those who could have claimed it were cut down by the most zealous of their order. With all this in mind, it suddenly becomes clear that Leda has no issue whatsoever putting those she is supposed to work alongside to the sword based on her own assertions. Perhaps this is why Miquella needed to put one of his own knights under his enchantment, to quell her murderous intent and have her safely work alongside others. Immediately after cutting down Hornsent, Leda is back to considering which of our companions is most likely to betray kindly Miquella.
Who else, I wonder? I don't enjoy casting suspicion on anyone I've called a comrade. But it's a small sacrifice in the grand scheme of things. We must eradicate all doubt. There you are. I'm afraid Sir Ansbach will have to be next. He insists that he's nothing but a worn-down over-the-hill soldier. But in his day, he was the feared commander of the pure-blood knights, who cleaved open Miquella the Kind with his blood blade. He claims he hasn't the spirit to take up his sword again, but I doubt it'll be very long before he recalls, as I have, the cascading sheets of blood. I'm afraid he cannot be left to fester. I've come to a realization. There's ample evidence. Without kindly Miquella's influence, I'm quite mistrustful of others.
The way she claims that without Miquella's influence she is mistrustful of others seems to imply that this is something Leda didn't know about herself. It's possible she's been under Miquella's enchantment so long that she has little, if any, recognition of her life before. If she truly did murder the rest of the Needle Knights, then it's possible Miquella enchanted her to make her stop and follow his orders as he intended, rather than as she interpreted them. Given this line, we can assume she doesn't even remember the heinous act she's committed. Either that, or those memories have yet to surface since the enchantment was broken. Either way, we're given another choice: to help her kill the Honorable Sir Ansbach, or defend him against the Needle Knight. Should we help Leda kill Ansbach, she gives us the retaliatory cross-tree talisman and says,
There you are. I appreciate the help in battle. Sir Ansbach must have considered it an honourable end, being felled by your hand. After all, the good fellow held you in the highest regard. When we speak of it, we may speak with pride that we were Sir Ansbach's final adversaries. You are an odd one, aren't you? The enchantment is broken, and yet you alone appear completely unchanged, as if nothing was ever cast upon you. No matter. If you found your way here, it was because kindly Miquella wished it so. But I am afraid this is our farewell. When next we meet, let it be under the eyes of Miquella the Kind. Goodbye, comrade.
While she calls us comrade, she seems to finally understand that we were never under Miquella's spell. And we know how Leda treats her comrades, if she detects even the slightest whiff of treason against kindly Miquella. From this point on, we cannot encounter Leda again until we reach the cleansing chamber of Lim. Upon following the letters left to us by Ansbach, Dane, and Leda, we make our way to the Church of the Bud, and use Mesmer's flame to burn the sealing tree obscuring Lim. We explore this ancient divine structure as we make our way to the peak, where the Gate of Divinity and Miquella await us. However, after we fight our way through to the last chamber before the top of the tower, Needle Knight Leda stands before us, blocking our way.
I thought I'd see you here. It's been quite some time. It was never kindly Miquella, was it? The Erdtree was leading you all along, so that you might ascend to lordship. Why come to these lands to begin with? I suppose it must be what His Eminence, or perhaps the Erdtree, desired all along. The clashing of the favoured lords. Such that one would prevail. So be it. If you insist upon facing Miquella the Kind, then I will run you through whoever you might be. Don't tarry now.
Depending on who we've killed or brought over to our side of the battle, we will face off against a number of foes, but it will always include both Leda and Dryleaf Dane, the two followers of kindly Miquella, who cannot be swayed to see the error of their lord's ways. Leda will chastise herself for ever acting as our compatriot, and begin trying to put us to death with the many needles produced by her sword. Upon defeating her, she says, "Kindly Miquella, make the world a gentler place." this is where the Needle Knight meets her end, so that we may ascend to the gate and face Miquella and his promised consort, so that we may determine the new order that shall take hold of the lands between. Needle Knight Leda was a knight who believed the path to peace was paved in bloodshed, not only of her enemies, but of those who would question the intentions of her lord. Her final words to us make it clear that she always wanted to see Miquella's dream of a gentler world come to fruition, but it stands to reason that by its very definition, she should have no place in that world. Leda was always a deeply bloodthirsty warrior, and a Lands Between under the guidance of Miquella may have been the only way for her to calm her sword hand. Miquella's enchantment was the only thing that stood between Leda and the death of her companions. She cut down the other Needle Knights, leaving herself the last remaining member of their order, forcing her own lord's hand to enchant her. Leda, though her appearance was that of a gentle woman, was a monster without Miquella's power, bottling up her murderous intent. In this case, the white of her cloak should not denote pure intention, but instead would serve to amplify the appearance of the blood she spilled. While we can choose to help the Needle Knight ferret out those who would betray her lord, she makes it all too clear that we should not put any stock in our status as comrades in arms. We know from the start that we are not under Miquella's enchantment, and as she reveals her true self to us throughout Shadow of the Erdtree, it should become apparent that this fact would always lead to a final confrontation with the Needle Knight. After all, if Leda can't trust those who were enchanted alongside her, what chance did we have of her trusting us, even if we helped her weed out possible pockets of future insurrection against kindly Miquella and the world he and Leda wished to create? Thank you for joining us for our dissection of Needle Knight Leda, the leader of those enchanted by Miquella. What do you think of our analysis of this bloodthirsty warrior clad in white? Did Leda murder the rest of the Needle Knights for some perceived treason? Did Miquella enchant her because there was no other way to make this knight play well with others? After defeating her, did you take up Leda's sword and use Miquella's needles to cut down those who stood in the way of your ascension? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and set notifications to all so you never miss out on any of our lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden lore.